Hey watch friends, today we're going to take a look at this latest prototype from the micro brand Alcadus, and this is their Velos model. If you're familiar with the channel, you've probably seen the Opus model featured before. It also, as we'll see here, was a 39mm watch, and I like that watch overall. I was particularly excited though to see the V2 that's going to be coming out soon. So let's see if this one impresses as much as that one did overall. This one, as you can see, for the packaging is going to be a chronograph style, and of course you do see this one has 3 buttons on here, and we'll talk about the reasons for that why as we go through. So with that, first let's go ahead and take a look at the packaging that this one comes with. If you previously saw my review of the Opus, this packaging will look familiar. On the outside you have a cardboard box, and it has a magnetic closure, and of course as you can see it is signed there. When you open it up, you have nice printing on the top side of the lid. Then you have a foam cutout, and of course the watch presentation as it comes on the included strap. If you lift that up, down underneath you have, as you can see, an NFC. This is actually their warranty card. Very heavy steel, very rigid. One of the beefiest, actually probably the beefiest that I've ever seen for that. So interesting touch there. I like that. That's pretty cool. And then right here, you do have a watch roll included as well. As you can see, it has the wraparound to keep that closed. And then it does have branding there. And opening it up, I believe this is leather, which if you're familiar with the channel, and as I'll probably mention with the straps as well, unfortunately, I personally don't prefer leather. However, I know many of you will like that. So down here at the bottom, you can see branding on the inside as well. And then flip up the flap, and it does have three pouch slot. So overall, nice packaging for this one. All right, now that you have a better idea as to what's included, let's talk about more on the specific watch. First, for warranty, this does come with a 3-year warranty, which is actually technically 2 years plus 1 year. So 2 years standard, and then when you register on their site, you do get an additional year. So very generous warranty for that overall. The case size is coming in at 39mm, which some of you, before you think that it's too small for your wrist, if you do have a larger wrist, I think with the chrono buttons and all those kind of things that are going on with this, I think it would wear well on larger wrists also, so I wouldn't get too scared away from that. Overall, I think the wrist presence is nice, as we'll see throughout this video. As far as the lugs, this does come with a strap change friendly 20mm for the lug size, and as we'll see, this actually has multiple strap options that are available for this. You actually get to pick 2 different straps for it, and we'll look at some of the options that they have, which is a nice touch there. As for the lug to lug, this one is coming in at 45.6mm. And I was remiss in saying, I mentioned that this is a prototype, but I do want to mention there are going to be some changes throughout this, and one we'll talk about right off the bat is you can see this is a full polish on this. However, they are not yet certain whether they're going to stick with the full polish or possibly add brushing with polished accents. So I do encourage you, leave a comment in the bottom so they can check it out. Give them some early feedback as to what you would prefer. Whether you like this with the full polish look, I'm honestly torn myself, or if you would prefer to have some brushing mixed in there as well. As for the thickness, this one is coming in at 12.4mm, so a reasonable thickness overall for that, especially considering the fact that that's including that very high box crystal there. And that crystal is a sapphire crystal and does have an inner AR. I'm not sure if this is the same exact one as was included on the Opus, but I did like that one, had nice distortion to it, real interesting for the box edge, so I was glad to see that carry forward and becoming somewhat of a design feature of the brand. As far as the movement, this one will have a fair amount to talk about. This is, to me, one of the highlights of this watch is the movement that's included. While it is a quartz movement, as you might have noticed from that sub-dial tick going around there, this one comes with the ETA, and it is with an ETA movement rather, and it is a 251.294 FK. That's a mouthful on that one. So it is a quartz movement, but it actually has a flyback function for it, and we'll look at all this different functionality. This thing, to me, it has been a fidget dream. I'm not necessarily the biggest chronograph guy in the world. You know, I enjoy them, I appreciate them, but they're not ones that I really feel the need to play around with that much. But let's go ahead and actually look at some of this. Of course, you get the ticking second going around. This one does not have a sweep when you activate the chrono function there. If you push that pusher again, you get this stop there, and you might have noticed this top right sub-dial. That does go for a 1/10 of a second scale that we'll look at more as well, so that's where that shoots to there. Here we have the minute function, and then if we actually resume that and push this top, you actually have a split function as well, which is a cool touch. One of the things I really like though with that flyback, look at how that goes. and you can rocket that all the way around, and being a quartz, it just starts right back up on there. So this thing, there's so many ways that you can play around with this, and this is just barely scratching the surface. One of the things that's pretty cool is this movement does also have a recall function. So if we stop that while we had a split going, and then you push this, you can see it goes back to where it was on the prior split too. So really interesting movement overall, and I have found this to be a lot of fun. The reason I said that we'll be talking about this a fair amount is, first, I'll give you a little more on the specifications for this, but unfortunately, since this prototype was released, ETA just recently, unfortunately, decided that they're going to discontinue the movement that's in this specific one. So what I can tell you is do keep an eye out. The owner is still trying to source enough of the movements to be able to do a run with this specific movement, and I would highly encourage you to jump on one of those if you are interested in this piece, because I think that movement is a blast. Otherwise, they are going to be changing over. Presently, it's anticipated to the 251.264, which is basically, I believe, more or less the same movement, but it loses that flyback function in there, which is one of the things I really enjoy. But giving the details on the one that we're actually looking at today, it comes with a 6-year battery life. So despite being a quartz, you're not going to have to deal with annual inconvenience or anything for that, or every 2 or 3 years even. So that's really great there. Of course, playing around with it, that might change your actual life expectancy. We already looked at the flyback function. We also saw this has the split function with the recall capability there. This, with the ticking second, does actually have a low battery indicator as well. As you can see here, it does only go for half hashes, so it's only going, as you can see, goes 20 to 30 there. So this is going in half-second increments with only having 5 ticks in between, and we'll look at all that more. And then finally, this one does have hacking as well, so if you pop the crown, it does stop that sub-dial second for this movement. Switching over to the water resistance, this one is going to come standard with 100 meters or 10 atmospheres of water resistance. And the weight on this is quite diminutive. It is on this strap that's pictured here, though they're all going to be similar. It only comes in at 73.4 grams, and that's despite being 316L stainless steel for this, so it's not titanium or anything, coming in well under 100 grams. This is a complete and total featherweight. It disappears on the wrist. Very, very much a pleasure to wear. It doesn't, to me, at all feel that lightness that some people complain about with titanium, of feeling a little cheap. I think this feels very solid, but it definitely does disappear on the wrist. So I personally like that quite a lot. All right, now that we have a better idea as to the basic specs of the watch, let's go ahead and look at some of the deeper dive into the characteristics here. So first, let's talk about the colors. This one, of course, comes in the gray that we're looking at today, but then it also is going to be available in a blue, a green, a panda, and a full black version, and that actually includes the case as well. The expected release for this is going to be coming around September or October of 2021, and this will be debuting on Kickstarter. The anticipated pricing, I'll go ahead and give you that now, is going to be coming in at roughly $400 for early bird pricing, so that's really not too bad at all. Shifting back to the actual dial, you can see one of the highlights of the dial is it does have a vertical brushing across. And that brushing almost has, to me, especially on this gray variant, almost has like a distressed look to that. So it gives a real interesting finishing to it. I don't believe it actually is. I think it's just the way that it plays with the light. But I really enjoyed that, and I believe that the other ones will exhibit that same characteristic. So nice touch. On the outer perimeter, it does have a rehot, and as you can see, that rehot on this particular one is going to be white, and it does have a tachymeter that goes around the perimeter as well, as one might expect for a chronograph. Around the perimeter, moving in from there, it does have, on the dial itself, it does have a 5th scale for your second hand. In this, while it does not have a moving primary second, it does have a sub-dial for your moving second, and that is for your primary time. Of course, as we already saw, this does have a chrono ticking second as well. It does have 3 sub-dials. Of course, these are going to be at the 10 o'clock, the 2 o'clock, and the 6 o'clock positioning. Moving in that order there, the 10 o'clock is going to be your minute markers for your elapsed time on the chronograph. The 2 o'clock is going to be your 10th second scale for the chronograph. And then down at the 6 o'clock is going to be your primary time second. So it does have a effectively 3-hand configuration, but via a sub-dial. Shifting over to the hardware, this one does have polished hardware all the way around, and that's for both the minute and hour hand, as well as for the markers. You can see, though, the accent feature for the second hand on the chrono, as well as the sub-dials, is going to be black for your primary, and then on this particular one, white for your split second. The I would describe the hands on the primary hands rather, I would describe them as being like a pencil design, but they do have a center crease similar to that of like a Dauphine style. And as you can see, and we'll talk about more, that does have loom applied as well. I do want to note the second hand, the primary second hand, that's actually the Alcadus symbol, so that's not a logo, or that is not rather an arrow there, that is actually their logo. You can see if we get in close there, that does have that curvature to it, which is really interesting, and I like that touch. They will be making an adjustment on the production version. They're actually going to kick that up a little more, so that's going to cover up perfectly the second A in Alcadus, so right in the middle there, which I thought that was really good attention to detail. I like that adjustment. I think that's cool. All right, the markers here are going to be applied markers, as we've already talked about. Those are full polish all the way around. And then they do have the printed markers that are on the dial as well, and then of course for your sub-dials also. There is printed text, as we just looked at, the Alcadus name at the top. You have Velos below that, and that's all for this. So overall, especially with having the dials, I'm glad to see that they did keep this pretty clean for the overall aesthetic. As far as the loom on this, there is loom applied to all of the markers as well as the hands. You do have on the moving chrono hand, you do have that Alcadus logo, as we'll see here in just a moment. That is loomed as well. One thing that's really neat, and we'll see in the loom footage, is this does have BGW9 is going to be the primary loom, but then on the markers, you can see that outer perimeter, that is actually a C3 that's applied there. So it does have a nice dual loom feature and accent, which I thought that was a cool touch. So with that, let's go ahead and take a look at this loom. As you can see, the loom, I think, presents very well. It does pick up in natural lighting or with UV charging. The dual loom feature, I think, is a cool touch. It adds some interest and allure to that overall. And one thing to note is the production version, even though this one didn't disappoint, will actually have even more loom applied. So that's a great accent. I'll never turn down more loom. All right, switching back to the actual watch itself, let's go ahead and look at that bezel. The bezel, and let's get rid of some of these fingerprints while we're going here. That's the one downside with this polish. It cleans up very easily, but at the same time, it is a fingerprint magnet, which is why I'm trying to hold on to these straps throughout. All right, the bezel here, as you can see, this one does have a flush bezel, and it is on the current version going to be a full polish, and it has a nice chamfer cut to it, which I think segues well to bridge kind of between your case and to transition to that high box dome crystal. So I thought that was a good design for that bezel cut. All right, shifting over to the case, you can see this does have what I would describe as like a slab style for the case. Of course, as we've already talked about, this does currently have full polish, but that might be changing. The lugs on this are going to be downturned lugs, as you can see, and they have a nice flowing sweep to them overall. And then it does have underside, you have not really a cut there. It actually sets back with the case back, which gives it almost the look of a chamfer cut, but as we can see there, it is a somewhat sharp edge, though you can't feel any sharpness from that. Just visually, it is a sharper cut there. Shifting over to the aerial view of the crowns, or the lugs rather, you can see that these lugs do have a nice compound cut to them. I think that's cool. You know, I like when it's not just a straight slab going down, so you've got an angle cut here, and then an angle cut going through there, which I think visually adds some intrigue to that as well. Shifting over to the crown side, as we've already talked about, this does have your pusher buttons at 2, your 4, and your 10 o'clock position. We've already looked at some of the basic functionality of that. Of course, this is going to be activating your primary, this is going to be reset, and then this is going to be your split and recall for that. There's more information that's available for these if you want to learn more about the specific movement. The button press on this, I found it to be very satisfying. Let's see if we can get this to here. Nice click to it. So despite the fact that this is not a mechanical movement, it does have some of that tactile click that you would otherwise get from a mechanical. So that I think is nice also. And then as we've already talked about ad nauseum here, the finish is to be determined. So take all of that with a grain of salt here. It may or may not look like this, and you do have some ability to help steer that by sharing your feedback as to what you'd prefer. Shifting over now to the crown, this one, as you can see, does have a signed, and that's actually a loomed crown as well. And I'll go ahead and pop up a picture of that. The crown itself is coming in at 5.4 millimeters, a little on the small side, and we'll talk about that more. Additionally, it is a little bit skinny here, so it sits pretty close to the case, which I think visually looks nice, though it does add a little bit of a challenge for gripping onto that one. And this is a screw-in crown, in case you didn't pick up on that piece there. As far as the case back, This one does have a screw-in case back as well, in part to help with the water resistance as well as for ease of maintenance. The overall for the finishing on this, I think it's cleanly applied, and there is still a sticker on the back there, but it's a nice, I think it's an interesting pattern. Let's go ahead and spin that around in case you want to pause anywhere and see any of that text. But this does have a dual pattern to it, so you have brushing, and then you also have a blasted, whether it be sand or bead blasted, so it adds nice contrast. The depth of that I think is good overall. It doesn't dig into the hand or anything like that, even with the sticker removed for that piece. Shifting over to the straps, and I said we'd revisit this more. The straps, of course, are going to be coming in at 20 millimeters. This does taper down at the last hole. You're going to be coming in at 15.5 millimeters, so it has a nice taper going down for that. Overall, the quality of this I think is very pleasing. Certainly, as we've talked about, I personally do not use leather, so I would prefer to have a non-leather option available. But I do think visually on this particular colorway, I think this is nice looking. It does have an excellent signed buckle, and this is the same that was on the Opus. I believe this is the same strap overall also, but it has nice for your male end there, and then the buckle itself is nicely finished and good looking also. And then as for the choices, let's go ahead and pop some of those in. We have this suede texture that's here. There's also this textured black. There is this textured brown. There is this textured, it's kind of in between the two. It's somewhat of a grayish brown there. As you can see next to the gray, it has a little bit of green hue, a little bit of gray, etc. And then there's this one's a little bit sportier, which I think lends to like more of a driving kind of aesthetic for this chronograph. So you will have the option. I'm not sure if there will be other ones available, but I believe these are going to be some of your choices there. So you have a lot of options available, and you do get to pick 2 of those with this watch. So with all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and look at a few size comparisons. I wanted to do kind of bookends. So this one coming in at 39 millimeters. Here it is next to a Velos Nova, and this is a 38 millimeter watch. That gives you an idea there size-wise. And then going for the opposite direction, this is next to a Notice, and this is their Sector Pilot, and this is a 40 millimeter watch, and of course with a rotating bezel on that one. That gives you an idea there size-wise. And then a bigger one that's actually in for review that will be coming soon here. This is a Timeless, and this is the HMS02. And this one is going to be coming in, I believe, 41, 42 millimeters. I apologize. I don't have all the specs for this yet. As I said, I'm working on the review. This one just came in, but we'll have more information on that. So that gives you an idea as to how this stacks up size-wise. So now let's go ahead and wrap things up, look at some of the positives, some of the critiques, or what I would like to see changed on the production model, as well as the overall thoughts. First, for the positives, that movement, I think it's a blast. I have had so much fun fiddling with this one overall. It really, as the title says, this one to me is almost like a fidget toy for watch lovers. So I think that's really fun. I am sad to see that movement will not be continuing moving forward. However, I am hoping it does make it into the initial batch, and do encourage anyone interested to try to grab one of those. The form factor, I think, is refreshing. This is definitely on the smaller side for a chronograph, which I think lends to a little bit of a dressier style, and this is on my 6.5 inch wrist here. I think that this allows you to wear it a little more versatily than you do with most chronos, where even on a smaller wrist it still looks good, but on a larger wrist as well, I think it has plenty of dial size and presence that you're not going to, for most people, find it to be too small, but it does add to that versatility, so you can wear it casually or with a little bit of a dress outfit as well. The dials, I think, on this are very nice looking. I like that distressed finish. I'm particularly pleased with this gray version, though of course I haven't seen the other ones in person. Those I'm sure are pleasing as well. This would be probably my preference if I were to get one. The battery life on this particular piece on this particular movement rather, is going to be coming with 6 years, which is just fantastic for a quartz. So I think that takes away one of the biggest downsides with a quartz movement. So that's a nice touch. And then as far as comfort and weight, we already talked about that earlier. Great comfort, excellent weight, so I'm very pleased with that. As far as some of the critiques, first, the chrono. So with the chrono function here, specifically the minute, if you look here, you can see that does have individual ticks all the way around. However, when that goes, there's actually 2 for every 1 minute, so it doesn't hit those. What it actually does is it jumps every 2 ticks, so that's going to be simplified. Since this is just going in 5-minute increments here, it's just going to have your 4 ticks in between, which I think is perfect. That'll add so much to legibility. I understand the aesthetic choice they were going for, just to add for the overall design with that, but I'm glad that they're changing that for the production. That was definitely one of my feedback items. Quality control, and of course this is just a prototype as we've talked about. Quality control, there's a little bit that could be improved. The sub-dial, you can see the second hand is just slightly off. It's very close, and it's common to quartz, but it is something I'd like to see cleaned up. And then additionally, you might be able to pick up here, but right below there's actually a kind of a marker spot on the dial below the 2 o'clock sub-dial. That's something that could be cleaned up easily enough, and I expect won't make it onto the production model, but just little things to note. The crown grip, we did talk about that one. It is a little hard to grab. Functionally, you can work with it. It's fine, but I do think that this a little more could be done with this. It's a little on the skinny side. It's a little on the short side. Overall, do note, especially if you have big fingers, it is a little bit tough to grip, but with being a quartz, you're not going to be gripping it very frequently, so really not too big of a deal there, but something I did want to mention. And then, as you would expect for being a quartz movement, this one does have the ticking function. You saw it on the chrono function as well as the second. I know many of you, including myself, do prefer a nice smooth sweep. With this being a primary second sub-dial, it doesn't bother me as much with having that tick. And the same thing's true with the chrono. When you're using it, you're typically not watching that sweep as much. So it's not something that I prefer, but at the same time, it's really not that big of a deal either. And it's something you should probably expect with most quartz movements, though we've looked at some that don't have that. So where does that leave us in closing? Overall, I think that this is an excellent execution of this design. I like the clean language. I like the fact that it's a little bit dressier and smaller for a chrono. It opens up the market there for someone with my wrist size or smaller, with not feeling like you're wearing too bulky of a watch. So I think that that's excellent, and I'm pleased with the concept they're doing here. So generally speaking, I would say if you're looking for a somewhat racing style watch, if you're looking for a smaller or dressier chrono, or if you're just in the market for a new chronograph, this is one I think you'll definitely want to have on your radar. So do keep an eye out for the Kickstarter launch. As I mentioned, should be around September or October of 2021, and more information to come from the brand for that. But I hope this video has been helpful for you and has given you kind of a teaser as to what to expect for this one. If you did enjoy this, please do hit that like button, and if you haven't done so already, it helps me tremendously to hit that subscribe button. Additionally, if you want to help out the channel further, I will have some links in the video description with Amazon affiliate. And finally, if you want to find me in another medium, you can find me on Instagram. Thanks for watching.